You're listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, I hope you had a better night than I did last night. How about you, Jeff?
I can now put Derecho Survivor on my resume. Hey!
Yeah, about midnight, 12:30, I hear the thunder. I get up and see, I wonder what's going on outside. And as I'm looking out our dining room window, a big thunderclap right on top of us. Ooh. I mean, it startled me. Woke up the wife, the whole thing. And I was, we heard that.
Yep.
We have an alarm that's in our neighborhood, and you can hear it most of the time. And I already thought I'm going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be limbs and trash all over the place. But
widespread devastation. Not really here.
Not really here.
I think Benbrook, they got it handed to them. And some of those cities up north, holy smokes. Mm-hmm. But they ought to be used to it. They get clobbered. It
really is. They get, my sister-in-law lives in Hearst, and they get this terrible weather, and they're only, 20, 30 miles away.
Right.
And so they've had this several times, but it seems like Burleson again. Everybody jokes about that bubble, but I think there may be something to that.
Saved us again.
I don't know if it's geography or it's because we pray so much. I don't know.
It's just good old clean living.
Clean living, that's it. Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to talk about the real estate market and see how much clean living we've been doing, because I know the market's been struggling a bit, and so we'll be talking about that and how you navigate through all of this. But let's talk about the sponsors, shall we? That's always a lot of fun. Our Place Restaurant with Otto. I bet you saw the Our Place 2 as you drove into town.
Oh, yeah. I've been there 3 or 4 times already.
Oh, the Our Place 2?
Yep.
And I bet it's exactly like the one in Burleson, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I've been to the one in Cleburne, and, the food and the service is the 2 most consistent things about our place, and it's true whichever our place you go to, which is a good thing. And, we go there. I go there every other Thursday morning to try to solve the world's problems with the rest of the men in my Sunday school class, and you can see how well we're doing. But
y'all need to
pick up the pace.
Maybe meet on Tuesdays as well.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, it's hard to get up in the morning. It really is. I'm getting lazier as I get older. But anyway, thank you, Otto, for that, and for Gina's Pizza as well. I really do like that place.
Me too.
I go there because I like the atmosphere. It's a good summertime thing. Go in mid-afternoon. He has the sports on. Usually there's some baseball game going on, or at least hopefully, or something, or golf or something, and go and have a pizza and a beer and whatever else, and it's a good thing to do.
Yep.
So there you go.
I had a sandwich in there the other day at lunch. Mm-hmm. Good sandwiches.
Which one?
Gina's.
Oh, I don't know which sandwich, though.
The Italian.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I've had that. And I've had the meatball, and it really is good, and it fills you up. Also, I bet my buddy John is busy today.
Man.
Over at Old Pro Roofing. John Williams, 817-734-2756. They may be Burleson-based, but they go all over DFW. He came and inspected my roof a week ago Friday, and it didn't cost anything for that. And I didn't have any damage that I was worried about, but I do it once a year because I don't want to have it sneak up on me, because the insurance companies can be kind of difficult about that.
Yep.
And he came out 10 minutes later and said, no, you're good. And then he's getting in his truck. He's heading to Allard. So that's a long drive from here.
Man.
But, we got a lot of good roofing companies around here. But you want to deal with home folks. You want to deal with somebody that if you have an issue or a concern, that they work here in Burleson and you know where to find them. And John is really, really good at his job. Call him at 817-734-2756. That is 817-734-2756 if you got hammered last night, because you're going to get hit up by a lot of roofers. On the way over here, I got a text from some roofing company I never heard of before. Hey, we're in the neighborhood. We want to check your roof out. No, thanks. And I don't begrudge how people make a living, but you don't really want to deal with somebody that's just coming through the neighborhood.
Yep. Find you one that if you see at Walmart, they'll still look you in the eye.
Mm-hmm. Well, John's part of my B&I group, so I see him almost every Wednesday, and so I've gotten to know him pretty well, and that's a good thing. And then, of course, there's you.
There's our old buddy right there.
Yeah, there's the old Hollywood star himself, 817-781-0546. And you don't really use the office numbers much. I always just tell them the cell number, because basically, how often are you in the office?
Oh, a lot, but we all work off cell phones now.
Yeah.
So if you call the office, they're going to say, here's his cell number. So Just memorize that one. That's the one you put in your phone as the cell number.
Or the Jeff at jeffkellyrealty.com with the Weathington Agency. Didn't you just open up a new space?
Yes.
Where's
right there on Wilshire, 501 Southwest Wilshire Boulevard, Suite D.
Okay. I'm trying to picture that in my mind.
Do you know where Christina Dahl's law office has been forever?
Well, I guess I do, but you're going to have to, near a gas station.
Across the street from where the old Brahms was.
Okay.
Yep, the little U-shaped shopping center.
Yeah.
Our broker and owner actually bought that building.
Okay.
So we own that now, which is cool.
Well, so you moved really kind of to the other side of town.
Yep.
I guess, is it closer to the real estate or just a better deal?
Yeah, it's just got to own it. Actually, pay less with the payment than we do in rent. Mm-hmm. So these crazy commercial rent rates, it was good to get away from that.
Yeah. Well, we'll be talking a lot about that in a few minutes, certainly. Also, our friend Tiffany Jane at Local Life Magazine, I'm sure it's come out already. It comes out usually the first of the month unless there's some sort of crisis. And you know, sometimes she gets snagged with paper issues.
Really?
Yeah. You know, because of the tariffs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because she has to sometimes shop a little bit more and that kind of thing. But Local Life Magazine goes to 30,000 homes, and it's more than 30,000 eyeballs, though. I see it at other places, like in some retail establishments, and people will, peruse it while they wait and whatnot. So it's a good thing to do. Have an advertisement with Tiffany. She'll set you right up. Also, my friend Al over at Bass Printing and Consulting. He does all the promotional stuff for us at BNI, and he can do yours too. Al Rick, that's ALRICK at bassprinting.com or 817-616-8761. He's over at the Hub here in town, and so if you're looking to stamp your logo on just about anything you can think of, he can do it.
Good to know.
Oh yeah. It does good work. I've used him for some of my trifold brochures and some mailers and my cards and stuff like that, and he does a lot of that, but he also does hats, shirts, banners, coffee cups, you name it. So if you do a lot of that kind of stuff?
Not like I used to.
Well,
I need to. Some things.
You want me to have him call you? Sure.
I think you should. I think it's somebody I need to know.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's an interesting guy. He's from St. Kitts.
Okay.
And so he's got a lot of personality.
I bet.
No, he's a very fine man. We go to church together.
Okay.
So I see him there too. I guess, Taylor, go to that headline from this morning's Star-Telegram. See, this is why Mr. Allard's neighborhood is so contemporary, so on top of things, because they knew that we were going to be talking today. And so the Star-Telegram put this as their headline about the Fort Worth market cooling. Here's what that means for buyers and sellers. You could verify this is an accurate statement, isn't it? Yeah. What's going on?
Well, we can blame it on rates, just like we have for the last year and a half. Rates this morning, conventional 30-year fix was just a couple of ticks below 7%. And the government rates are better. FHA and VA is around 6.5%. But the volatility this year, I think if it would just get somewhere and just stay.
Even at 7%?
I think everybody, and we're starting to see some of that. All the people that have held off for the last 2 or 3 years are like, we got to go. We cannot wait anymore. And so there's still, there's a lot going on. We are at, in just about every price point right now, realtors, appraisers, we look at absorption rate. And so...
You're going to have to define what that is for us.
So, like, right now in 2 or 3 of the bigger price points, we have a 6-month supply of inventory. So that's the absorption rate is if no more houses came on the market, it would take 6 months to clear out the inventory that we have now. Now let's contrast that to COVID, where it was about 3 days supply of inventory. So just over time, it's ticked down to about 6 months, which is technically a balanced market, but it's flirting with the buyer's market, where we've been in the seller's market for so many years.
Well, I know my mom and dad have been trying to sell their home in Corsicana.
Okay.
And they've had to lower the price twice. And they, Corsicana market is a lot different than Burleson, of course. And, the house that they own is a little bit bigger than average. And so I don't know if those sell less quickly. But it's really been kind of tough because they do need to sell that house because they already moved into a smaller house because of my parents' health and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it's lot less maintenance, and it just I wish the house would sell. But there's just not a lot of buyers in Corsicana.
Right.
Now, I know that's a different thing than here in Burleson. But when I read about what's going on in the Fort Worth area, that does affect Burleson to some degree. Also, last week I read in the Wall Street Journal an article very similar to that, a more nationwide look, and it said that March was okay, April was okay, then May just fell right off the cliff, and they didn't have many sales at all, in comparison. And that struck me because isn't May, June, July kind of the hot months for y'all, so to speak?
It is. March sets up May, and then May sets up July, and those are my two biggest months of the year. If I'm going to do multiple closings in those two, it's.
And that's when you actually get paid.
Right.
You don't get paid in March, get paid in May.
No, you don't get paid to ride around in the car and show houses or put signs in the yard. You get paid to get them sold. Rates have a lot to do with that. The consumer sentiment is really weird right now. And where I'm seeing it is I always carry a lot of listings and do now, and it's just showing, and nobody is committing it to paper. And that may be because there's so much more inventory to look at. It's people are having a hard time making a decision.
I was told by another colleague in the industry that you marry the price and date the rate. That basically it's a better thing to get the house you really want, even if the rate's a little high, and you can always refinance.
Right.
I mean, that's what my wife and I did a long, long time ago. Is that when we were building, it was 9.25%, and that was at that time decent rate.
Right.
Because the interest
Just what
rates,
the money cost.
Yeah, back in the day, the 80s, and certainly in the late 70s, but in the 80s, interest rates are a lot higher than they've been. And we went and we built a house, and then we refinanced it. Oh, gosh. We lowered our payment twice, and I've taken money out 2 or 3 times. I mean, we should have our house paid for by now, but we use it as a bank almost, pay for college loans and major repairs and things like that.
Yeah, with home equity loans.
Yeah. And so we got like 4 and 0.375, and that's pretty good. But now it's great.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get back to there. I think that it's probably going to land somewhere around 6 or maybe a little less, and just kind of hold there for a few years until we get this debt problem figured out. Because we're just in this vacuum where nothing can really happen.
Well, that's a whole other conversation. I talked about the debt and the deficit issues about 2 weeks ago, and I have real concerns because a lot of people think that because the rates have been so cheap, and we can print our own money and pay our debts in our own money, which most countries can't do. They have to, pay their debts in dollars. They did think it's just an unending stream of money, but that isn't true.
No,
and we're seeing the impact of it by it's artificially inflating interest rates.
Yes,
and it hurts so many industries, not just real estate, but all these other industries.
Yep.
And I'll be talking about that more next week, I think. But when it comes to the Burleson area, are we seeing the same thing that we just read about Fort Worth?
It's cooling because the weird thing is interest rates go up, prices go down, and it always does this, always. But technically, we still have an inventory shortage. If we get some help on rates and some people hit the market, we're going to be right back where we were. Even with a 6-month supply, it could change in a month, and we'd be right back where we were. But when you can go look at 3 houses today, and then there's 3 more come on the market the next day, and the next day, it's hard for people to make a decision. Now we've got people, well, am I going to lose my job? Is that part safe? There's just so many things there's just too much confusion out there in the market right now. Till things settle down, it's just going to be hard to.
Well, I know that when people buy houses, or it's like buying cars in no sense. It's like, if I commit today, am I going to regret it tomorrow because I'm going to come across a better deal or what I think is a better deal? And so they hold out because they think, well, I don't want to, put my name on the contract today, and then tomorrow I find out this house is going on the market that's about $30,000 less, and all this, it's just exactly what I wanted, and all this other stuff. There's a lot of, I, I, think they're afraid of buyer's remorse.
Yep.
But, I think they're afraid of buyer's remorse. But, I think they're afraid of buyer's remorse. But, I think they're afraid of buyer's remorse. Yep. But, I think they're afraid of buyer's remorse.
Just afraid to make a bad decision.
Well, my thinking would be, if you like this house, then you didn't make a bad decision.
Right.
And if you're going to hold out for the perfect, you may be stuck for a long time. I know that any house, particularly that's already been built, and you're showing it, I'm sure a lot of your clients go through and say, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could change the carpet or whatever. If they're looking for the perfect house where they could just move in and not have to do anything to it, good luck with that.
Right.
That's not going to happen. But I think a lot of buyers, particularly first-time buyers, think, this may be their own house. I'm one of the rare exceptions. Rob and I built our house in '91, and we're still in it. Mm-hmm. We haven't moved. I guess I'm too lazy. Now,
it's too much work.
It's a lot of work because, just moving my daughter, she had a lot less stuff in a lot smaller house. It was a beating. Mm-hmm. But, no, we like where we live, and we like our house, and we've done a lot of things to it and all that. But as far as people holding out for the perfect, I think that's going to cost them.
Right.
Because housing, and also, you mentioned earlier, when the rates go up, the pricing goes down and vice versa, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you're not going to be able to renegotiate the price of the house, right?
Nope.
So if the rates do somehow miraculously, without economic disruption, were cut in half today, what would happen to the prices of homes?
It would cause them to go back up.
Right. And so you're not really going to be saving a whole lot of money.
No.
Because you're still going to be borrowing more.
Well, what you get into is we go back to fighting over them and bidding over list price and all those things we did during COVID and post-COVID.
Yeah.
So it washes out.
Yeah. My sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, had a house in Arlington, and they moved to Corsicana near my parents. Mm-hmm. And they had an open house. They didn't even bother listing it. Their agent didn't list it. They had an open house, and it was on a Sunday afternoon, and by that Sunday evening, they had 4 offers.
Right.
About tens of thousands over the asking price. And I think a lot of people thought that's the way the market works normally, and therefore I'm going to do the same thing. And that's not what's happened at all. And that's not what happened I mentioned my mom and dad's house. They listed it to what they thought they could get, and now they've had to take a significant cut on it just to keep it competitive.
Yep. For my listings right now, I have to following up hard with every single buyer's agent that shows them to make sure, what did the buyer think about it? And what I'm looking for is trying to find some kind of objection that we can overcome that we don't know about. Well, they really liked it except for this. Well, what if the seller were to fix that, or things like that, where before we didn't really have to do that.
Well, that's what happened in my daughter's house. We had to fix her roof. We didn't even know it needed fixing until potential buyers they hired somebody.
Inspection?
Yeah, came out for inspection. And they said, you need to fix this roof. And it cost about $5,000. And they just took it off the top of the price.
Right.
So my daughter ended up making a little less money on her house because of that. But that's the way it works, isn't it? Yep. I mean, that's same thing with the air conditioner.
Yep. In a buyer's market, those are some of those things you have to do. You've got, a lot of these, at 7% with a buy down, you can get down into the, low 6s, high 5s with that. Mm-hmm. But the buyer may not have the cash to fund the buy down, so they may ask the seller for a concession for that. We see a lot of concessions now that we didn't see last year and the year before that, where the sellers are having to help with some of these closing costs or help with the rate buy downs and things like that.
What if they don't have the cash for it?
The sellers?
Yeah.
Then you got to find another buyer.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the good news is everybody's still got plenty of equity.
Yeah.
So you may not want to, but that may be one of the things that you have to do to be more competitive with what else is on the market. Yeah.
Well, in my mom's case, she handles everything now because my dad's well past the condition to do anything about it. He's I've told the listeners here many times about my father's health issues, and she's concerned it won't sell and all this other stuff. And my sister and I saying, no, it'll sell. Just we got to be patient. But she hadn't had a house payment in like 30 years. Mm. Okay, and so when they moved in a new house, they now have a house payment, kind of a bridge to kind of, because they thought they'd sell the old house in about 3 months.
Right.
Well, we're going on 9 months now, and that's just the way it is. We can I don't know how upset we could be about it because that's just the economy. But we're hoping for a miracle, something like that. But and also what's hurting in Corsicana is they got several houses of their level on the market as well in their neighborhood even. And so if you pulled into a neighborhood, a general area, there's going to be about 6 or 7 houses
with
that are very
signs in the
similar.
yard.
What size is it?
No, I say with signs in the yard.
Yeah,
Yep.
hers is about 2,800 square feet.
Okay.
Very nice house, very nice yard, in a very established neighborhood in Corsicana. And there are probably about 7 or 8 other houses just like it.
So that gets back to what I was talking about. The month's supply of inventory. So there's enough supply that she's competing with a lot of other properties. Like in the, I looked at, did a market analysis for a past client here 2 or 3 days ago. $360,000 house, and there were 31 houses that same price point in Burleson for sale that they would be competing with if they went on the market today.
So you said 360? Not that long ago, 360 was a higher than average
Absolutely
house. Now it's about average, right?
Right.
I mean, I get the Zillow reports, on my email, and isn't the Burleson home average around 360?
It is 360, 375 in that range.
That's amazing to me because when
Crazy.
Well, it is, because back 20 years ago, if you paid $360,000 for a house, you're getting a pretty big
Nice house with a big lot.
Yeah, and now it's almost maybe just barely a step above a starter home.
Right.
And that, I guess, leads into my next question: is that which is harder to sell, a house like my mother's, a good-sized house, or a brand new built house, it's smaller, like 1,600, 1,800 square feet, which is harder to sell, a smaller one or a larger one?
Probably one of the larger ones. And even in the good times, the higher price pointed houses will take longer to sell because it's a smaller buyer pool.
Well, do you sell a lot of new builds?
I do, every chance I get. And I list a lot of new builds, and we're lucky now because the builders they're offering some pretty crazy incentives,
Really?
which they have to.
Sure.
But that's coming straight out of their profit margin, so they're not going to be able to do it for forever. But for right now, I've seen some stuff, $25,000 back to the buyer, up to $30,000, $40,000, trying to keep this stuff moving.
Now, that housing development on Renfro, okay, that's pretty much built out, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Where is the next major housing development in Burleson going to be?
There's a big one on County Road 714 that's going to be higher end, but it's going to be like 750 and up. It's a gated neighborhood.
Pecan Grove?
Yes.
Yes, I drive by. I use 714 to get to the other side
Okay.
of Burleson because I get tired of pounding my
me
way
too.
through Wilshire, particularly around that administration building, Walmart, all that business. It's like, I'll just take the country route, even if the roads are so beat up.
Right.
But I drive by it, and Lord have mercy, that road's going to be, well, it's not going to be a shortcut anymore because, that new build. And I saw that out there, but I noticed that we're not talking about what we're talking about. What's it? What do they call it over at Renfro Hunters, something or other?
Yeah, Hunter's Ridge.
Yeah. Right. Those were about what, 275 to 300?
More than 300.
Or more than 300. Oh, good heavens.
Yep.
So I'm thinking of people like my son and my daughter, and they're, how difficult it is for them to get into a house. And, but then but I guess the money's in those big houses because that's where they're building them.
That's where the profit margins are. When you consider a lot, I mean, you can spend 75 to 125 just for a lot. And you think about these builders that build for a profit. I mean, you've got to build these big houses to get any profit.
Yeah. So the idea of building mass-produced homes, like
It's got to be up to D.R. Horton and some of the big guys that can go in there and just, they're all vertically integrated. They're developers, they're the builders, they're the mortgage company, they're the title company. I mean, from
so every
sun
step
up
of
to
the way.
sunrise to sundown, they control that.
Do you work for somebody like D.R. Horton? Say it right, D.R. Horton. I mean, do you deal with them a lot?
I do.
Okay. Are they hard to deal with?
No, they love real estate agents.
Okay, good.
And they take care of their people, but it's crazy. You'll go out there and you can, they'll just go from one to the next. Like this week we're pouring concrete. Next week we're framing, and it's just like a machine.
There was a book review I read last week about Levittown, with Joseph Levitt back in the late 40s, who kind of perfected this Henry Ford type production model.
Yep.
And that's why almost all of them were. Some of these are long gone now, but when I was in Plano, we'd have that same thing. They'd take out, a couple of square miles, it seemed like, a couple of sections, and they would just pop up like toadstools,
Yep.
One day you're looking at pasture, 30 days later you get a housing development.
Right.
And, boy, it put pressure on the schools, I know that much. Do we have anything like that coming, a lower end cost homes?
There's some stuff in the works. I haven't really seen them scratching dirt anywhere lately.
How do you get access to this information? Just keep it informed, gossip with the other agents?
A lot of that is, and a lot of it's, if you hang out in planning and zoning and go to the city council meetings, you can kind of get some insight on that.
I know at Autos Joint they have a real estate group that
Yes,
meets.
every Thursday morning.
Right. Have you ever go to that?
Used to.
Yeah. And so you go there, have a little coffee, and exchange information.
Right. Talk up your listings. Back in the old days, and we still do it sometimes, everybody would load up and we would go do a caravan, look at the new listings for the week. And, the photography and videography has gotten so sophisticated now that that's not as critical as it once was, because you can pop up on Zillow and really see how these houses look. But it's different to go stand in one and think, this would be great for the Allards right here. I'm going to call them.
Yeah. Well, I know John over at OPRO does drone work for them as well, and a couple of real estate people have asked him to do some drone video so they could show clients and whatever else. So I bet that's another way of getting the word out, But as far as, trying just to keep up with what's going on, I'm sure it's a full-time job in itself. How about that development that's going in Chisholm Trail? Is that anything happening there? I haven't talked to Justin Bond in a little while, so I don't know what's going
Summit?
on. Yes.
I'm not sure what's going on out there.
Yeah, I don't either. I haven't seen any development moving yet. I know it takes time. It isn't like you sign the deal on Monday and start moving dirt on Tuesday.
It's a crazy slow process and lots of moving parts.
Well, tomorrow we see Alex Phillips here, and we're going to ask him about a couple of pieces of commercial property that I think have been laying idle for a long, long time. And I'm sure he has a pretty good idea why that's happened, but it's, one of the things that supposedly the state of Texas is going to do is going to make it more difficult for zoning issues. They're going to take a lot of the zoning powers out of the hands of the local governments. And I think that's designed for more like Austin or Houston or a lot of these more restrictive covenant type communities.
I hope it's not for around here, because it's there. Actually, I can't remember. There are some cities around. I think it's Houston that has no zoning laws.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
and if you want to know what that's going to look like, drive around out in the country where everybody's not in the city limits and look at some of the stuff that goes on out there, and just
Well, I do know near where I live, there were some covenants that we had to obey even if we're in the county,
right,
that the developer put on there. But if the developer didn't do that, then you can. It's whatever you
do
want.
whatever you want to, or if nobody enforces them.
Well, that's true. I don't know who would enforce it in Johnson County. I guess how would they know? And if they did find out, that the personnel would come deal with it and all this other stuff.
Right.
But we haven't needed to worry about that where we are. But I do know that when I was talking to the mayor, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I'll be talking to him a week from tomorrow. He's going to be on the 17th. We're going to talk about the zoning issues that the state of Texas addressed, and one of them was if you have communities that have very restrictive zoning, they may take that out of your hands, and that would concern me if I were the mayor or planning and zoning, because you don't want basically a Wild West attitude about.
No, I think that the less that we can keep Austin out of what's going on in Burleson, Texas, the better off we're going to be.
And we weren't saying that about Austin about 15, 20 years ago,
Right.
but now my show on Monday is going to be talking about the last legislature and some of the things that passed, particularly with schools, and it's like more and more they're taking over what used to be local prerogatives, and it's concerning.
Right.
But anyway, that's next week's subject. But as far as the the Burleson area, Johnson County, I know Garley was blowing up. I know Joshua was growing pretty quickly. I know Grandview kind of has a nice steady growth. I don't know about Keene or Alvarado. I haven't seen much out there, but
I've been showing in Alvarado the last 30 days or so, and I've run across 2 developments out there. One that's on County Road 608, which is the exit right before 67 if you're going south. A couple of big ones down there that they're building streets and going through all that in.
This is near those motorhome dealerships and whatnot. Yeah.
It'd be behind those.
Yeah, the motorhome specialist and all that. Yeah, I drive by there occasionally, and I'd see dirt moving there. But so there is, I guess, enough incentive for people to actually put their money into building those things and investing in all that and whatnot. But like we've been talking about, it's been kind of tough. And then, of course, you couple that with the rent prices, which are, I don't understand why rent is so expensive in Burleson. I really don't.
Supply and demand.
Yeah, I guess so. But we're building apartments, you know, and I was in Dallas over the weekend. Sorry, and man, they're throwing up apartments about every square foot.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and here, I don't know of any that are going up currently. But I know that's planned on. There's a couple of spaces I know that have been designated for multi-housing.
For multifamily.
Yeah, multifamily housing. But I haven't seen any building going on just yet.
Right.
But the rental prices, I mean, my daughter was here renting in Burleson 2-3 years ago, and she was paying nearly $500 more a month than I was in my mortgage. And that's, I don't know.
I don't know how they do it.
I don't know how they do it either. I don't know how these young people are doing it. You know, one of the reasons why we stayed in our house so long is because we like it and we like the space we have, and you know, it's very convenient to schools and all that other business. But the other factor in that was, where would we go?
Right.
Even if we sold our house for what we wanted, we're not going to be moving up. You know, it's the old tradition that you sell your house and you move to the next level house. That's getting harder and harder to do. And I guess you see that more often than I do.
Absolutely. You know, that's our problem at my house. It's like, yeah, we've been in that house. She's actually built the house in 2007. I moved there in 2014.
So you married her for her house?
I did.
Oh, good for you.
Yep,
See,
upgraded neighborhoods, all kinds of perks.
Not just neighborhoods, but you know, living companion.
Absolutely. And she even had a lawn guy, so I got to retire from mowing the lawn. It was crazy.
Oh boy, you fell into tall cotton, didn't you?
We look around and it's like, you know, the only reason that we'd want to move is because we're tired of looking at the house that we're in. It's fine. But basically, we're going to get exactly what we got for twice as much money.
Yeah.
And so if it's not a lifestyle thing or, hey, honey, you know, I got a job in Grapevine, we need to move there, or, you know, something like that where we have to move, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us.
Yeah, that's one reason why we, instead of trying to change our housing, you know, where we live, Rob and I said, let's just change our house.
Right.
And that's when we upgraded the ceilings and the floors and blah, 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 and that kind of thing. So we made it more to the place that this may be where they carry us out with the sheet over us, so we might as well make it nice enough, because we're not going to find this somewhere else for what we can afford.
That's true.
And so we're kind of, I don't know if stuck is a word, because we're not discontent about it, but but, you know, it is a major factor. And I look at my son. He didn't live in this area. He lives in Oklahoma City, but they're the same issues. Yeah, and they want to buy a house. He makes good money, but it's just the same thing. It's hard to find a house that they can afford.
It's hard to get started.
Yeah, it's either, you know, if you want to go lower, you're going to be moving into a sketchier neighborhood, or, you know, maybe other issues involved with the house. And it's just really, really tough.
I would love to see, and I may get run out of town on a rail for saying this, but I would love to see somebody come in and develop some townhomes that could be, you know, the low to mid 200 range, where, you know, to solve this problem that we've got with starter homes. I mean, because you cannot start at 360.
No.
You know, they don't have any down payment. There's just too many things. You know, the people that go to the 360 houses are the ones that bought the 180 houses, and they have equity to bring with them. And when you don't have the starter home, first-time buyer part of the segment of the market working, it screws everything up upstream, because you know, it goes like this.
Well, I don't know if this is still the attitude, but I do know that say 15 years ago, there was a lot of push against townhomes. And I remember Rocky Branson was going to build some, and he got all sorts of static at a P&Z meeting. And I attended that meeting because where they were going to build is where that Roots Nursery is now.
Okay.
All right. And I didn't really understand the issue. I didn't have an objection to it, but I knew several of my neighbors did, so I kind of want to know what the problem was. So I went to that particular P&Z meeting, and boy, it was rock and rolling too. And then they ended up rejecting his bid.
Okay.
And he was very upset by that, and I don't doubt it.
Was it built to rent, or was he going to? I'm talking about building them and build to sell.
If I remember correctly, they were to be sold.
Okay.
And his whole motivation was he wanted to build something that like his mother could move into, a townhome, that decent townhome, and whatever else. And the objection that the neighbors had in that area was that, okay, you say you were going to buy them now, but you'll be renting them 10 years from now. And also is going to be hard up against one of the streets there. And they were talking about traffic and all this other stuff. And personally, now that I have a mother and dad in that condition, I would love for them to be living down the street from me in a townhome. And I sympathize with Rocky on that one, because there's a lot of people, I'm at that time in my 30s, but there's a lot of people now my age taking care of our parents that have been great, that they would have a situation where they could live without having to worry about yards or maintenance or whatever else.
Well, and the alternative is independent living, starting there, probably $4,000 a month for that, going all the way up to, if they needed even more care. My mother-in-law when she was in memory care, it was a little over $7,000 a month to care for her. And thank goodness she had the long-term care insurance to pay for it, but she was 1 in 20 that actually had that.
Right.
And, so that's a big problem. So a 55 plus would be great, but for sure something that we can get these first-time home buyers in that will build some equity.
Well, we now have in Burleson 2 or 3 developments like that. One's right across from BHS, and I'm really bad with names. And there's another one near HEB, I know.
Right.
And they're very, very nice, and they take really good care of their residents. But it ain't for free.
Nope.
And so it's a consideration. And not to get too involved in my personal story, we're making some hard decisions very soon about my father. And one of the options that he won't go for is a facility. All right. But it would have been nice if we had like a townhome deal where my mother didn't have to worry about taking care of most everything else, because they had like a plumbing problem in the new house, and she had to take care of it. In a townhome, usually they come with some sort of maintenance deal.
They do. You own everything inside the walls, and the association owns everything out. So,
and so it would be nice. And you're right, though. We could use it. And my son or my daughter could probably afford $250,000 townhome, and probably would prefer it. My son hates yard work, so
a lot of people do.
Yeah.
If you're single, who wants to work on the yard or whatever.
Well, I'm not crazy. I'm not one of these fanatics about the yard. I do try to keep it really nice and all that, but people say I enjoy mowing the yard. I'm thinking you need help.
Yep.
You
need another hobby.
Yeah, but the only thing I like doing with the yard is my garden. I have a vegetable garden I like to tend, but other than that, it's like everything else is a chore. Right. But also, I'd like to see that as well. And why we haven't had that in Burleson, I don't know. Maybe I'll ask the mayor, if he knows anything.
Be a good question. I know that a lot of, even like duplexes, places like that, duplexes, if you could find one for sale, they're hot.
Well, we got a lot of duplexes in Burleson.
But there's not, they haven't zoned any new areas for multifamily in a long time.
I mean, there's a bunch over behind Walmart that I know of. And, and it depends on the duplex. I mean, there's I see some. I drive by them. I see some that need to be better taken care of, and then I drive by right next to it, and there's one's very nice. And I know some of my younger ex-students. That's where they started.
Right.
And got married. They moved into a duplex, or even if they weren't married, they were still single. They'd move into a duplex.
Sure.
And it's a way to build equity and all this other stuff, or they were renting in some cases. But it was. I get concerned a little bit about having a society that for generations has been built on home ownership is just not going to be available to my children.
But between Wall Street, the amount of houses that they're buying.
Oh yeah, that's another issue.
And then, a lot of these, like that community behind Walmart, it's a built-to-rent community. Every single house was built from scratch to be a rental. Every single one of them. And
Well,
that's a real hot trend in real estate investing right now, is these BTR, built to rent communities and houses and things like that.
I think that's what those smaller units are behind Aldi. The Rocky Branch.
That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
not Walmart behind Aldi. That's a built to rent neighborhood.
Yeah. And if I understand the story right, that wasn't the original intent, but there's more money in the build to rent than it was just to build to sell.
Right.
And okay, I believe it. I get concerned a little bit about are we going to get to a situation, where we're going to make it almost impossible for the younger generation to ever buy a home and acquire equity, which is the biggest source of wealth for most
Absolutely.
people.
You look at the difference between a renter's equity or a renter's net worth and a homeowner's net worth, and it's substantial. And it's not just because they own a house. I mean, it's everything else that goes along with it, the tax benefits, all the things that come with it.
And then, of course, in the last session, they just raised the homestead exemption $40,000. Is that going to help you any? Not going to make any difference?
It will help a little. It'll help me personally.
But as a real estate
until
agent,
they wrangle them in on what they can do with the appraised values, they'll figure out a way to squeeze the air from one end of the balloon to the other.
That's exactly what we're talking about with Mr. Fletcher on Tuesday of next week, because I set this up with him late last week. What day is a good day? Blah blah blah. What do you want to talk about? And he wants to talk about the Central Appraisal District.
Okay.
Quite a bit, because I know they have some proposals that concern him greatly about what it would do to finances in the city.
Right.
Now, as far as that $40,000 extra in homestead exemption, I kind of did the math. It's going to save me about $700 a year. Okay, which I'm not going to sneeze at, but I don't know if it's going to dramatically change my lifestyle.
Probably not. It will help us people when they qualify. It'll help us then, and it's just anything right now that we can get. We just need to be grateful for it and be glad that they're thinking that way. But it's one of these days we're not going to have this surplus that we've got down in Austin, and they won't be able to do things like this. So I think that this has got to be solved one way or another now.
They're also part of that bill was when you turn 65, your homestead exemption goes to $200,000.
Okay.
All right. I always wondered, whose age do they go by? Because very few couples are the same age exactly. One's going to get 65 before the other.
I think as long as one of them is 65, then
okay. See, my wife is a little bit older. She didn't want y'all to know that, by the way.
Ooh,
but she's a few months older. All right. She's just joined Hot Work, so I bet that's where she is right now.
Well, they'll take 10 years off of her age. So
yeah. Yep. Right. So, but I'm just saying that I always wondered, did they both have to be 65, or just when the first one crossed that line, it applies? So, if you're a 65-year-old man and you have a 22-year-old wife, she really banked.
Right. She did good.
Not that I.
That's
would
about all
endorse
she got, probably. But.
Yeah. Well, no doubt that she married a 40-year older man for his looks and wit, but that's another story.
Right.
But I just wondered, when y'all see what goes on in Austin about property values and all that, I really thought actually there'd be more progress on property tax issues. I wonder, does that affect your market? Do people say, particularly from out of state, that gives them more incentive to buy and things like that?
It does, but it's killing us on these, with the rates the way they are, and then insurance is nuts. God bless all my insurance agent buddies, but holy smoke bombs, it's just, and you throw the whole thing at it, and people are having trouble qualifying now. For anything.
I have a good insurer. I have Texas Farm Bureau.
Me too.
And I'm not unhappy with them at all, but they did raise my rates. And I can't say that makes them unique in that market. Everybody else did too.
Right.
In fact, for a while, we had some that weren't even selling this market. I think they've come back in some cases, but unlike State Farm, I think restricted a bunch. I know, but it's another show for another time. But it just, I do get concerned that what's going to happen is, and maybe I'm just getting a little paranoid, that as these house values get higher and people, invest in it and whatever else, and then they got so high that they can't find any buyers, we're going to have this major housing crash, a big bubble similar to what happened in 2008. Everybody was so heavily invested in homes, and a lot of people that really didn't qualify were getting qualified, sometimes a little bit of hook and crook, with Countrywide in particular. But, that the housing values are going so high that, that if we start having an economic downturn, people want to start sell their houses and they can't. We're going to have a big market crash. Is that possible?
Not right now, because so many houses don't even have a mortgage right now, and the ones that do have so much equity. I mean, just like your parents' house, there is a number that house will sell for this afternoon. It's just, are they willing to take it or not? And I'm assuming that they probably got a ton of equity in it, and it may be one of those situations where they may have to go a route like that to stop making house payments at the new place, and of course the carrying charges, taxes, insurance, upkeep, while this thing's on the market is not free.
Well, my mother's case is she wants to sell the house enough to pay off the note for the newer one and leave some for living, and then leave some for my sister and I. And my sister and I told her, don't think about that. She and I, don't think about us. That's not a. Don't make that a factor in your house decision, because it shouldn't be.
Right.
And but I go back to my situation. I'm not a wealthy man by any means, but by equity standards, if something had to happen, some crisis happened, and I had to sell my house, I would have some money.
Right.
But I didn't have lived there for 30 years.
So you contrast that to 2007 and 8 when they were doing all these crazy mortgages. I mean, they were doing 108% of value loans, and people living in these houses 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years with no equity. But I lost my job. My wife ran off with the milkman.
Yeah.
All these things that started happening to people. All these adjustable mortgages started adjusting, and people didn't have any equity. So here comes the foreclosures and short sales and all that to come along. But we don't really have that problem now because people are so equity rich.
Well, also I did not understand what exactly collateral-based debt was until this happened. And I saw a very informative YouTube, and I like to think I'm fairly well educated. I have taught economics, and here comes the CBD thing. Right? Now, I'm not talking about the CBD you get down at the vape store.
Right.
But collateral-based debt. And I saw it explained to me, and how rogue the operations were. I mean, there was all these guys that were collecting these bundles of debt, and you get the good one, you get not so good, and you get the crap, and you have to buy them all together. And the crap was when they started going out, it started working its way up and causing the better ones to fall. And I thought, man, that's abusive,
Yeah, it was, and they cleaned a lot of that up. Dodd-Frank cleaned a lot of that stuff up, and the loans that they've made since 2008, they're good loans. I mean, Fannie and Freddie are just making money hand over fist. That's why Trump is talking again about getting the government control out of Fannie and Freddie again, feeling that they can stand on their own. But they're making good loans and all good as far as that goes. We don't really have the problems that actually caused that and what happened right after.
Well, we got a couple of people watching this. Hello to Sherry Scott and hello to Otto. How you doing? Yeah. I am concerned about a bubble. Of course, you read the newspapers, you read listen to the media and whatever else, and they predicted like 9 out of the last 3 recessions, that kind of thing. Every time you pick up the New York Times, you think doom is around the corner. When it comes to economic-based news, I stick with the Journal because it's subjective more so than the Times. The Post isn't too bad, but I am concerned about a situation where a generation of people can't get into new homes, and I'm not so sure government involvement in building those homes, subsidizing those homes, is the way to do it, because every time you subsidize something, the costs seem to inflate. You read about this stuff about housing developments that are subsidized by the government for like low-income buyers and stuff like that, and all of a sudden,
here's your $8,000 thing.
Right,
by the way, this house, we had a price increase. It's $8,000 higher.
Yeah, well, it's like back in the old days, back in the 19th century, said when you were like building a public building and said, how much is that chair? It's $5. No, it's $50, and you will get 20, and I'll take 30. And we have people in jail who dealt that way with the city of Dallas, and a couple of developers and a couple of city council people, because they were inflating the cost of the building artificially.
Right.
And that's what I'm afraid would happen. Is that okay? Otto says, "Great topic, guys. Got to run. I'll catch the rest on replay." Thank you, Otto. Thank you for your support, buddy. what I'm talking, what I'm concerned about is that let's say that we have a piece of land here and the government wants to subsidize building. It may be cheaper for the buyer, but it ain't going to be cheaper for the taxpayer because they're going to be paying inflated labor costs, padded labor costs, padded expense costs. One last thing, have these tariffs affected your business? Because I know it might make certain building more expensive.
Directly, there's a builder that I represent that I list his properties for, and he sent me some new price lists the other day, and I was like, oh, God, here we go. Mm-hmm. His base pricing stayed the same, but it was the options that went up, and it was directly related to all this tariff activity, either gearing up for it or it's already happened. Mm-hmm. So, yes. We're starting to see that. I know of a couple of people that have bought cars in the last few months. That's one of their big deals right now at the car lot is, we've had all these tariffs. So,
right.
Which is, I don't even think that's happened yet. It's still kind of on the back burner. But
well, I would take my cousin's example. He works for an auto parts dealership up in Oklahoma, and a lot of their suppliers kind of proactively raise their costs in the prices of their materials in anticipation of the tariffs.
What's coming.
So even if the tariffs have been, today Trump woke up and said, I'll delay it 30 days. The impact has already been felt.
Right.
Because a lot of people have raised their price and then said, well, I'm going to drop it down for another 30 days. That's not going to happen. Mm-mm. And I talked to other people about these tariffs, like my brother-in-law in the car dealership and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I hope this is resolved soon. That's all I got to say. I'm not a fan of the tariffs at all. And I think I could see in the house building market how it affected. If we're going to quit buying Canadian lumber, it's going to make American lumber more expensive.
Sure it is. And it may, what do they have? A bunch of lumber stashed somewhere that we'll just buy? I mean, it would take forever. Mm-hmm. And then, it's crazy. I understand why he's doing it. And I've kind of read enough about the way that he negotiates. I kind of see it, but it's sure wreaking havoc in the short run for sure.
And not just real estate and cars. I mean, just about everything you can think of is affected by it. But that's what makes living in the United States so much fun.
Right. Well,
I'll still stay here though. I prefer America.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll take this over just about anywhere you can go.
Well, it's like what Winston Churchill said about democracy is the worst form of government ever invented, except for all the others.
Right.
It's like capitalism.
A whole bunch of people in second place, for sure.
Well, as far as the nonprofits going on, I don't have anything going on. I know of this month as much. They're kind of taking a break, I guess. But I do know in July, we have Christmas in July with Next Step Women's Center. And also, I got a message Friday from our friends over at Wings of Hope. They have a big deal going on at the Stockyards on August 1st. So you can check that out. If you throw the radio ads up there, buddy. By the way, we have a guest today. Taylor is filling in for Josh.
Let's go.
Hello to Taylor Perky. And,
the OG.
The OG.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I texted or emailed my friend Rich Hooper over to Journey, so he'll be promoting the show. He likes to promote the shows like this because, people who listen to even Christian music want to know about the going on, So they'll be talking about, checking into the show later, 88 through the Journey. Also, on community radio, this show will be on at 6 o'clock tonight, 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And I actually had a good weekend, numbers-wise. Usually weekends, some numbers fall drop.
Okay, good.
Pretty substantially, and I've kind of got used to that, but they actually were pretty good, so I'm hopeful. Anyway, you ought to do what a couple other sponsors are doing.
I'm going to. I just got to slow down and do it.
Yeah, I can do it for you.
Okay.
You want me to do it for you? Just send me what you want people to hear.
I'll try to put some ad copy together.
Yeah, okay. Because I got Otto, I can just track him down too. He's hard to get a hold of. No, John and Al do it.
Okay.
And I don't know how much it helps, but every little bit helps, right?
Absolutely.
And it's name recognition. But anyway, like I said, tomorrow I'm going to Alex Phillips. And, we kid about, is he going to tell us the secrets? And he knows what's going on like 6 months in advance, but you could take a bat to him and he's not going to tell you.
Oh, yeah. I saw the bottle of sodium pentothal over there. I assume that's for him.
Well, maybe so. That's not a bad. If I want to get the truth out, I'd have a different kind of bottle.
Yeah, there you go. Probably so.
But I got that, and then next week I'm going to talk about the school issues in there. Legislature just came out, and also with Mr. Fletcher, and we'll be talking about more or less these same things. You know, talking more about the tax situation, the CAD, and all that, and it's a busy time. And then, of course, they have to have their budget by in a couple of months. They'll have their preliminary budget work going on. That's always a party. Everybody's always very satisfied.
Fun and
with,
games.
Yeah, they're all satisfied with how much they get from the city. Yeah,
Sure,
yeah, it's a perfect budget. No problem.
Yep.
All righty. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Thanks
I
for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
No problem. We'll do this again in the fall, and hopefully things will be better.
Hope so.
It will be. All right, Taylor. I guess will I see you tomorrow?
Yeah, you'll see me tomorrow.
Is Josh out of town or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
No, you actually have to work for a living now. Too bad. I'll talk.